The United Kingdom is no stranger to political drama. But what unfolded recently feels like the beginning of a storm that could reshape the entire future of the nation. Nigel Farage, the man who has never shied away from confrontation, who has built his career on calling out what he sees as the failures of the establishment, has once again made headlines. But this time, it was not just another fiery speech, not just another soundbite designed to rattle Westminster. This time, Farage issued what he described as his final, brutal warning to Sir Keir Starmer over the upcoming election. And the way he said it, with such conviction and fire, left the entire political world stunned. For many years, Farage has been one of the most disruptive voices in British politics. Love him or hate him, no one can deny the influence he has had. From leading the charge on Brexit to reshaping the way people think about sovereignty, immigration, and accountability, Farage has positioned himself as the voice of millions who feel left behind. But recently, with Labour rising in the polls and Sir Keir Starmer presenting himself as the safe pair of hands to replace the chaos of recent governments, the stage was set for one of the fiercest political battles of our time. Farage's warning was not casual, nor was it vague. He looked straight into the cameras, his voice heavy with a mix of anger and urgency, and declared that if Starmer continued on the path he has chosen, the British people would be betrayed once again. He accused the Labour leader of dressing up as a man of the people, while secretly aligning with the same establishment interests that have repeatedly failed the working class. And then came the words that made headlines across every newspaper. This election is not just about politics, it is about the very survival of Britain as a free, sovereign nation. If Keir Starmer wins, the country you know and love will be gone forever. The weight of those words sent shockwaves across the political spectrum. Supporters of Farage rallied, saying he was simply telling the truth that Starmer represented more bureaucracy, more international deals, and more compromises at the expense of ordinary Britons. Critics, however, accused Farage of fear-mongering, of playing on emotions, and of once again stoking division. But regardless of where people stood, there was no denying the intensity of his message. It was a warning delivered not just to Starmer, but to every single person watching, as though he was pleading with the nation to wake up before it was too late. To understand why this moment feels so dramatic, you have to consider the backdrop against which it is happening. Britain has been through one of the most turbulent decades in its modern history. The promise of Brexit, the struggles of the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, soaring migration numbers, crumbling public services, each of these has left people more disillusioned with politics than ever before. And into this weary, frustrated environment steps Sir Keir Starmer, presenting himself as a steady leader, a man who promises competence and calm after years of chaos. But Farage's attack strikes at the very heart of Starmer's pitch, accusing him of being a polished mask, hiding the same failures that got Britain into this mess in the first place. Farage reminded the public that under Starmer's watch as a Labour leader, the party has become increasingly vague on its promises. He pointed out how Starmer had once championed certain policies only to abandon them when they became inconvenient. He reminded voters that the Labour leader has repeatedly shifted his stance on Brexit, on immigration, on taxation, leaving many to wonder what he truly believes in. Farage's brutal warning was simple. If you cannot trust a man to stick to his word before he becomes prime minister, how can you possibly trust him to run the country once he has power? The power of Farage's words lies not just in the facts, but in the emotion he stirs. His message is not delivered in the polished tones of a career politician. It is raw, it is blunt, and it connects directly with people's fears and frustrations. He speaks the language of anger, of betrayal, of urgency. And when he said this was his final warning, it carried with it the weight of a man who has spent decades fighting the establishment and believes this election could be Britain's last chance to turn things around. Starmer, of course, has brushed off the attack, describing Farage as a man who thrives on division and who is out of step with modern Britain. Labour officials were quick to dismiss the speech, claiming that Farage was trying to stir chaos because he knows his movement will never win a general election outright. But behind closed doors, there is nervousness. They know that Farage has a unique ability to tap into public anger in ways no one else can. They know that in key battleground seats, his words could sway voters, and that his warning, whether you agree with it or not, will echo in the minds of millions as they prepare to cast their ballots. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of Farage's warning is that it was not just aimed at Starmer or Labour, it was aimed at the British people themselves. He challenged them, almost pleaded with them, to take a stand, to refuse to accept another leader who makes promises only to break them. He warned that if they give Starmer power, they will regret it for generations to come, because the changes he will bring cannot be easily undone. And then, with his trademark fire, he declared, "If Britain chooses Keir Starmer, Britain chooses decline. But if Britain stands up now, if Britain demands real change, then there is still hope." Those words, hope versus decline, cut right to the core of the national debate. For millions of families struggling with rising bills, for communities feeling the strain of mass migration, for ordinary workers who feel like the system is stacked against them, the choice no longer feels abstract. It feels urgent, personal, and deeply emotional. And Farage knows this. That is why his warning struck such a chord. It was not about party politics, it was about the identity, the future, and the survival of a nation that many feel is slipping away. What happens next will define British politics for years to come. Will Farage's brutal warning be remembered as the moment the country woke up to the dangers of a Labour government under Starmer? Or will it fade into the noise of countless political speeches, dismissed as nothing more than rhetoric, from a man who has always thrived on shaking up the establishment? That is the question only the people can answer when they head to the polls. But one thing is certain. This election is unlike any other. The stakes feel higher, the choices starker, and the warnings more dramatic. Nigel Farage has sounded his final alarm, and the echoes of his words will linger long after the cameras stop rolling. The question now is, will Britain listen?